Okay. The Ark of the Covenant. I thought about, at the conclusion, since it's a history class, history lesson, giving a test, but I decided not to. The Ark of the Covenant was also called the Ark of the Testimony. It was a rectangular box made of shittim wood. Shittim is the Hebrew word for wait a minute, I already misspelled it. Okay. For the acacia wood, the acacia wood was extremely strong and very, very difficult for it to rot and decay. So it was used for a lot of different things. So the acacia wood, shittim wood, was chosen for the Ark of the Covenant. Now, if you Google Ark of the Covenant, you're going to get 30 or 40 different renditions, pictures of what somebody thought the Ark looked like. I just chose this one. It was 45 inches long. A cubit's measured from the tip of your finger to the elbow. It's 45 inches long, 27 inches wide, and 27 inches high. And it was fitted with two pairs of gold rings on each side to put those staves through. And they were made out of shittim wood and overlaid with gold. No one was allowed to touch the ark out of reverence for God's holiness. So the entire ark was inlaid, inside was inlaid with gold over the acacia wood, and the outside inlaid with gold. So it's gold, wood, gold. These staves, the poles through the rings, were also made out of the acacia tree, acacia wood, and they were covered with gold. Once in those rings, they were never to come out. The top of the ark, in here, that's the mercy seat. It had the two cherubims on top, facing each other, and there's different renditions of what these cherubims looked like, but they were facing each other. They symbolize the throne and the presence of God. God's presence is supposed to appear between the cherubims when the high priest went inside. And that's where God was to meet with Moses to begin with and communicate his commandments. And they're also the protectors of the throne of God. 1 Samuel 4:4, so the people sent to Shiloh that they might bring from thence the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth between the cherubim, and the sons of Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas were there with the ark of the covenant of God. Now, placed inside the ark were two tablets of stone that God, with the finger of God, wrote the 10 Commandments on. That's not all that was in there. Also placed in the ark was a pot, a golden pot of manna. You remember God provided manna for the Jews to eat. Exodus 16:33-34, and Moses said unto Aaron, take a pot and put an omer full of manna therein, and lay it before the Lord to be kept for your generations, as the Lord commanded Moses. So Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. Now, when he says laid it up, means they put it inside. And it was to be a remembrance of what God had done for them. Also placed in the ark was a rod. Now, there were murmurings among the leaders of the 12 tribes as to who would be chosen to be the high priest. As a test of the leaders of the 12 tribes, each one was to take a rod from a tree. I don't know if it was the acacia tree or not, but they were all supposed to take a rod from a tree. And each one wrote their name on the rod. And Aaron, the leader of the Levites, his name was written on his. Now these rods were laid up in the most holy place, the Holy of Holies, in the tabernacle, the innermost part of it. Now, a rod cut from a tree would not be able to grow overnight. Cut from the tree to grow at all, but it would not grow overnight. So this was a test. And the rod for Aaron, when they were checked the next morning, the rod for Aaron had produced buds and blooms and fruit. Moses showed all the rods to the leaders to prove that only Aaron's rod produced buds and blossoms. Like I said, this happened overnight. So the Lord told Moses in Numbers 17:5 and in verse 10, and it shall come to pass that the man's rod, whom I shall choose, shall blossom, and I will make to cease from me the murmurings of the children of Israel. In other words, whoever God chose, that's going to shut up those people. Whereby they murmur against you, Aaron's rod blossomed. And the Lord said unto Moses, bring Aaron's rod again before the testimony to be kept for a token against the rebels, and thou shalt quite take away their murmurings from me, that they die not. So God was serious about it. So Aaron's rod was put in the Ark of the Covenant. So inside of it, we got the tablets, 2 tablets of stone, the pot of manna, and Aaron's rod. Hebrews 9:3-4 says, and after the second veil, in other words, in the Holy of Holies, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all, which had the golden censer, and we'll talk about that, in the Ark of the Covenant, overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had manna, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the tablets or the tables of the covenant. And the ark served as a meeting place in the inner sanctuary, where the Lord would reveal his will to Moses. And we read in Exodus 25:22. Aaron, his commandments were revealed also to Aaron in Leviticus 16:2, and in Joshua in Joshua 7:6. So each high priest, when he came into the holiest of holies, that's where the presence of God came for them to make the atonement. So the mercy seat was the place of atonement. And the Hebrew word for mercy seat meant cover or place of atonement. Each year, once each year, the high priest entered the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of Covenant was kept, and only once. There he atoned or made amends for his sins and the sins of the people. The Day of Atonement was the 10th day of the 7th month. So that doesn't mean it was the 10th day of July, because their calendar did not correspond with ours. The Jews had a civil calendar, and they also had a sacred calendar, and the months were different on them. The Day of the Atonement was called, and you may have heard this before, Yom Kippur. That's what they call the Day of Atonement. And it's based on the sacred calendar from which the festivals occurred. And Leviticus 16 describes this ritual. The high priests were of the tribe of Levi. Levi 16 saying, thus shall Aaron come into the holy place with a young bullock for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. Leviticus 16, 12, 13, and he shall take a censer full of burning coals of fire from the altar before the Lord, and his hands full of sweet incense, beaten small, and bring it within the veil. And he shall put the incense upon the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of incense may cover the mercy seat that is upon the testimony, that he die not. So, high priest would take this golden censer into the Holy of Holies and put incense in the censer. You know, it was burning, put it in there, and it produced a cloud. And that cloud would cover the mercy seat so that the presence of God could not be seen by the high priest, because if he did, he would die. So then the high priest would take some of the blood of the sacrifice through the curtain and into the most holy place. And he would also take the censer in, and the smoke of the incense cover the mercy seat. Now, the God was dwelling above the mercy seat. So to see the mercy seat would be to see God, and that was fatal for the high priest. And as I said, this Day of Atonement took place on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the Jewish calendar of festivals, the 7th month was September, what we recognize as September to October, 30-day span in there. So the 10th day, really the 10th day of September, is when the high priest, once a year, would go into the Holy of Holies. Leviticus 23, 27, and 8. Also, on the 10th day of the 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and you shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made of fire unto the Lord. You shall do no work in that same day, for it's a day of atonement, to make atonement for you before the Lord your God. So this Day of Atonement was to make amends for sins, but it could not forgive sins. And as I said, this Day of Atonement in Jewish language is called Yom Kippur. So the high priest served as a mediator between God and the people. He was the only one that had contact with the Holy of Holies. And on a Day of Atonement, he entered the holy place 3 times. First, to burn the incense, to cause the cloud of smoke to cover the mercy seat and veil the presence of God. The second time, to sprinkle the blood of the bullock as an atonement for his sins. And the third time he went in there, this is all on the same day, to sprinkle the blood of a ram, a goat, on the mercy seat to make atonement for the sins of the people. So one commentator called the mercy seat on the ark as a scapegoat for sin. So now how does the Ark of the Covenant tie in with Christ and the gospel? The Day of Atonement foreshadowed the work of Christ and has been fulfilled at the cross, where Jesus, who knew no sin, died for those who are sinners. He was the fulfillment of the Old Testament mercy seat that it was pointing toward. not only was Jesus the mercy seat, he was also the high priest. He was the high priest that Aaron and his descendants could never be, because they could not gain forgiveness for the sins. And his sacrifice was a lot more important, far superior to those that were offered by the high priests of the Old Covenant. Hebrews 9, 11, and 12, but Christ being come a high priest of good things to come by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, he entered once into the holy place, having attained eternal redemption for us. And in 2 Corinthians 5:21, for he hath made him to be sin for us who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him, the innocent dying for the guilty, the perfect dying for the imperfect. And in Hebrews 10, 1 through 4 it says, for the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never, with those sacrifices which they offered year by year, continually make the comers thereunto perfect. For then, if they were made perfect, if they had been made perfect, they would not have ceased to be offered. Because that the worshipers purged should have had no more conscience of sins. But in those sacrifices, there is a remembrance, again made of sins every year. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sins. And in Hebrews 9, 24 through 26 and 28, for Christ is not entered into the holy place made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Nor yet that he should offer himself often, as the high priest entered into the holy place every year. Christ offered himself up one time, not every year. Every year with the blood of others, for then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now, once in the end of the world, hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. So, Christ was offered once to bear sins of many. And unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. So Jesus went to the cross. His blood was shed. He died once for our sins. The high priest under the Old Testament had to go in every year, sprinkling the blood of a bullock and a ram on the mercy seat to have atonement for the sins, not forgiveness, atonement. Some people, I've heard it many times, that the sins were just rolled forward. Well, I couldn't find anything in the scripture said that they roll forward like that. But in essence, that's what atonement means. They were atoned for their sins, but they weren't forgiven. So Jesus, as our mercy seat, he fulfilled all aspects of the Old Testament sacrifice of atonement. He was the high priest, the atoning sacrifice, and mercy seat. Romans 3, 23, 25, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Jesus Christ, whom God has set forth to be a propitiation, a mercy seat, through faith in his blood, to declare his righteousness for the remission of sins that are past through the forbearance of God. The high priest sprinkles blood for atonement of sins once a year. Jesus shed his blood one time for the sins of mankind. And now the rest of the story. The ark was a thing of unspeakable power. The ark led the Israelites in battle at Jericho. Joshua 6, 3 and 4, and ye shall compass the city, all ye men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days, and 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns, and the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And in verse 5, the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat. So the Ark of the Covenant was taken around the city of Jericho 1 time for 6 days, and then 7 times on the 7th day. And when the trumpets were blown, the people shouted, the walls came tumbling down. Now the Jews, they had a battle with the Philistines at a place called Ebenezer. And really they had 2 battles there. The first battle, they lost 4,000 men. So they immediately had the ark brought from Shiloh to Ebenezer. This scared the Philistines to death. When the ark came, there was such a commotion of enthusiasm from the Jews because they knew the power of the ark. The ark was going to save them. Philistines heard all this commotion, and it scared them to death because they knew that the ark was there. But they went into battle anyway. And this was God's plan. 30,000 Jews were killed, and the ark was captured. Big prize for them, or they thought. So 1 Samuel 4:5 tells how the Philistines took the ark to the city of Ashdod and set it in a temple beside their idol they worship, Dagon. The next day when they went in, Dagon was flat on the floor, face down. It shocked them, but they stood it back up. The next day, when they went in, Dagon was flat on the floor, face down. His head had been removed, and the palms of his hands had been removed. And that's not all. God struck them, the men of Ashdod, with emerods, tumors. Now, some commentators called them cancerous tumors, some called them plagued tumors. But tumors, outside of the body. Struck them with all these tumors. And they said, let's take this ark to Gath. Now, remember, Gath was the hometown of Goliath. So they take it to Gath to get rid of it at Ashdod. Well, that didn't help. God struck the men of Gath with these plague tumors. So what did they do? Let's get it to Ekron, get it out of Gath, get it out of here. So it's sent to Ekron. They had it. The Philistines had the ark 7 months, and you can guess what happened when they took it to Ekron. All the men, the people, burst out with these plague tumors. They had it 7 months, and all they did was cause tumors and death, the prize that they had won in battle. So they decided, let's get rid of it. Let's take it back to Israel. Give it back to them. But they decided to put replicas, gold replicas of these emerods, these tumors. 5 golden tumors they're going to put inside the ark. And 5 golden mice. Took gold and fashioned mice and put them. Each one of them was a guilt offering. So they put the ark on a cart, pulled by 2 cows, and they took it to set it in a field at Beth Shemite. Now the men of Beth Shemite, they're happy that the ark has been returned to them, but they just couldn't stand it. Their curiosity got to them. They had to look in the ark to see those 5 golden emerods and those 5 golden mice. And when they did, God immediately killed 50,070 men. The Bible says 50,000 70. 50,070 men killed because you looked in the ark and you weren't supposed to. You didn't look into or touch the ark. Okay, that brings us to theories. Where is the ark today? Well, one of the theories is concerns the Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba, her name was Makeda, M-A-K-E-D-A. Hearing about, these theories are on historical records. I'm not saying these are true. Historical records, historians say this is what happened. The Queen of Sheba, hearing about Solomon's wisdom and wealth, visited Solomon. Now that's in the Bible. 1 Kings 10, 1 through 3. And when the Queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. And she came to Jerusalem with a very great train, with camels that bear spices and very much gold and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she communed with him of all that was in her heart. And Solomon told her all her questions, and there was not anything hid from the king which he told her not. Whatever she asked, he answered the questions. So after they communed for however long they were there, verse 13 says, and the king Solomon, now you may read something else into this scripture. And the king Solomon gave unto the queen of Sheba all her desire, whatsoever she asked, beside that which Solomon gave her of his royal bounty. So he gave her something that she desired above, his wealth. So she turned and went to her own country, she and her servants. Well, historians say that Sheba had a baby by Solomon, a boy, and his name was Menelik. Well, what did I do with my marker? Menelik. Now, years later, historians say Menelik is said to have visited. He went to Jerusalem to study and learn from Solomon, his father. And while he was there, he supposedly stole the ark and took it to a city called Axum in Ethiopia. Let's see if I can. Took it to this chapel in Ethiopia. This is the Church of St. Mary of Zion, and it exists to this day. Now, there's armed guards. You don't see it, but there's fencing all around that, and there's armed guards. One historian says practically all the men in Axum had weapons to protect the ark. Armed guards outside and one lone monk inside. This monk, remember now, this is a theory. Now this, whether or not the ark is in there is a theory. But now the guards and the monk inside, That's all true. There was a archaeologist named Graham Hancock that went to Axum to see if he could get in there to see the Ark of the Covenant. And they refused to let him go in. Now that one monk is in there. He's a protector of the Ark, and he serves a lifetime appointment. Never comes out of the church. When he dies, another monk is appointed to take his place. A lifetime appointment. Now, theory says when they selected their process to select monks, some of them ran away because they knew what was going to happen if they were selected. And this Graham Hancock said he talked to 2 monks that had been in there with the Ark, supposedly a lifetime appointment, but they couldn't handle it, and they left. And when he talked to them, both of them had cataracts. They were blinded. Both of them the same. And Hancock said he asked them, were they blinded before they went in? And they said no. Said, looking at the Ark blinded them. Now there's replicas of the Ark. In Ethiopia, there's many Old Testament Jewish churches. And every one of them has a replica of the Ark of the Covenant. But there's only one, supposedly, that's real in the Church of St. Mary of Zion. There's no evidence to prove it because they can't see it. Now, this Hancock said he talked to the Israeli ambassador to Ethiopia and asked him if the Ark was in there in that church. And he said, yes, it is. And he asked him, and I'm sure this Israeli, he was going on what he was told. He wasn't allowed to go in. But Hancock asked him, why do you not get it and take it back to Jerusalem where it belongs? And Hancock told him that it would cause too much chaos if they did that. Now, the Babylonians, when they invaded Israel and destroyed the temple, they said they may have taken the ark. Now, they kept detailed records of what they took. 2 Kings 25, 13 through 15. And the pillars of brass that were in the house of the Lord, and the bases, and the brazen sea that was in the house of the Lord. And the Chaldees brake in pieces and carried the brass of them. They carried them to Babylon, and pots and shovels and snuffers and the spoons of all vessels of brass wherewith they ministered, they took away. And the fire pans and the bowls and such things were of gold, and of silver, and the captain of the guard took away. So all the things they listed there, what's missing? The Ark of the Covenant. Now, can you believe that the Philistines raided and destroyed the temple and took all those items out of the temple, and there was the Ark of the Covenant? You think they're going to just leave it there? There's no record of them taking it. And when the Israelites returned from captivity, there's no record of them bringing it back. So, another theory. The theory is that the ark is hidden to this day in an underground chamber. This is the dome called the Dome of the Rock. It's a mosque temple with a gold dome, and it's built on the site of the original temple. Now, underneath that mosque, it's built, the stone that it's built on is a sacred stone because that served as the foundation for the temple. And this mosque is built on that stone. And supposedly, the theory is that when the Babylonians invaded, Solomon put the ark in an underground chamber underneath this dome of the rock, 180 feet deep. And that brings us to another theory. Here again, this is a Twilight Zone theory called Project Stargate. I know I'm running long, but I don't have much. This is my last page here. Project Stargate. In the 70s, the CIA knew that Russia was experimenting with what they called remote viewing. This is what remote viewing is. It's a paranormal practice where individuals claim to perceive information about distant or unseen locations and events using their minds, associated with ESP, extrasensory perception. And it's generally regarded as fake science due to a lack of scientific evidence. So they knew, the CIA felt like Russia was trying to train these people to use their minds, ESP, to spy on the United States. So, hey, we got to do the same thing to them. So they started the Project Stargate. And it really didn't do a whole lot. So in the 80s, they came up with a project called Sunstreak. And this was more or less on the same line to try to get the mind to envision like what's in the pyramids and where the Ark of the Covenant might be. In 1988, many men, supposed to be psychics, were tested, and one, and they don't give his name, they just call him number 32, was said to have seen the ark in an underground chamber under the Dome of the Rock. Believe it or not. This was his report. Target is a container. This container has another container inside of it. The target is fashioned of wood, gold, and silver. The target is similar in shape to a coffin and is decorated with seraphim. This target is located somewhere in the Middle East, as the language spoken by individuals present seemed to be Arabic. Visuals of surrounding buildings indicated the presence of a mosque dome. The individuals in the area were clothed in virtually all white and black hair and dark eyes. One figure I homed in on wore a mustache. The target is hidden underground, dark and wet, where all aspects of the location of the target. The purpose of the target is to bring a people together. It has something to do with ceremony, memory, homage, and resurrection. There is an aspect of spirituality, information, lessons, and historical knowledge far beyond what we know. The target is protected by entities, supposedly angels in that chamber protecting the ark. And the ark can only be opened by those who are authorized to do so. This container cannot be opened until the time is deemed correct. Once it is time to open the container, the mechanics of the lock system will be found to be fairly simple. Individuals opening the container by prying or striking are destroyed by the container's protectors through the use of a power unknown to us. So this patient 32, with no evidence whatsoever, said that's what he saw, an underground under a mosque with a dome. They've tried to excavate to get underneath there. So far, it hasn't been successful. Now, believe it or not, I don't. Personally, I believe that the ark exists somewhere. When I Googled this, gold does not decay over time. The only thing that could happen is for it to be melted down, for which there's no mention. So I believe the ark exists somewhere. There's no proof of it, no visual evidence of where it is. But myself, this is what I believe. You may disagree, but this is what I believe. As precious as the Ark of the Covenant was to the people and to God, I don't believe he would have allowed it to be destroyed. So in conclusion, which you're probably glad I'm saying that, I'm going to leave you with some biblical food for thought. Revelation 11:19. And the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of the testament, and there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and earthquake and great hail. So in Revelation 11:19 it says, in heaven, the temple, or the Ark of the Covenant is in heaven. Truth or symbolism? Now we know that there's a lot of symbolism in Revelation. Is this truth or symbolism? Does God now have the ark in heaven? I don't know.